Hello dear viewer, how are you doing? Revan619 back here, and today I'm going to be going over the Noble and Astra Militarum Commander builds. I'm going to be doing something a little bit different, which is I'm going to be mostly talking through a battle showcase that I'm going to have one for Act 1, one for Act 2, and one in Act 4. And this is going to be talking about more how you play the builds, then going through sort of the nitty-gritty stuff like I have done in some of the older videos. Now, I know 1.5 is coming at late fall, which is going to update and change all of the origins, so if you're watching this then might not be relevant for you anymore, but for planning ahead for that, this is going to be a very good baseline to have. Now over here I do have the Noble build. We're going to go through the stats and we'll come back to look at all of the bits for the gear later, but the gear is going to be more what's best for you to have rather than me saying this is the best gear to be aiming for endgame. This just happens to be what I've had in my testing because I've not done a full playthrough of these builds. And also the Astra Militarum Commander. This one has a number of options, but I do like the improved heavy bolter on him. So let's go ahead and start looking at some of these bits for how we build them and how we talent them up. And then after each tier, we'll get in some battlefield and talk through it. Now, as we look at the first tier of the officer, normally I don't talk about which alignments to take or which colony rewards to take because I believe I shouldn't be dictating how you play the game and how your story unfolds. However, Iconoclast does have a lot of good upgrades for fellowship that you can get, so it is best to keep that in mind, but this build is going to be viable on any alignment path. Now, as we start going into this, I decided to focus on Persuasion because of the signet rings that you can get from the Inquisition at the end of Act 2, and I went to Law Imperium to use the Law Imperium trick at mid-game, which is where you can use either the Chartist Pendant or the Ancient Terror Monocle to change Law Imperium checks to be based on Fellowship. By doing that, you can then stack Breacher's Armor and St. Cognatius' Scriptures to have incredibly high armor rating on your Fellowship-based character. So if we look at what we've done here, going into it, like I said, we are focusing on Persuasion, and one of the first bits we're going to pick up here is Lasting Impression. The useful part about Lasting Impression is it keeps our buffs going for longer. I start off with going into Ballistic Skill, though you don't really need to be shooting on this build, but it's something I like to do. As a Noble, we are eventually going to go into Overseer, which means some of our stuff is going to be able to be retransmitted through the servo skull. So at rank 5 we pick up You Do Something, which is a way to get some little AP generation. At rank 6 we take Decisive Response, which lowers the cost of Voice of Command and bring it down for the first time in combat. Move is one that I really like because it helps get allies into position before you use Bring It Down. Ready Serve will also help be giving some more resolve to our allies as we're using our abilities on them. Focus, I've been deciding, is actually more important than I previously realized, because getting that bonuses to perception as well as ballistic skill is very useful for guaranteeing that you're getting those hits, so it is a good one to go into. Naturally, Finest Hour Upgrade 4 is the most important one. It's the reason why most people seem to think Jay's bad because she doesn't have it, but lowering the AP cost of non-attacks by 1, very, very good. Like I said, went to Imperium, pick up some Fellowship Code in rank 10. Now, we pick up Steel Resolve because increasing our Resolve actually does work with some of our abilities, like we'll see with Air of Authority, which is we increase our allies' Resolve by 2 times our own, 2 plus our own Resolve divided by 3. So the more Resolve we have, the more we give. When you're on your Rogue Trader, your Resolve will be through the roof. You'll probably have over 20 as an officer. Now, I take Characteristic Training Agility because more dodge and it increases our turn order, which is going to be very useful before you have Commander's Chrono. Spire Courage I like to do because it can proc some temporary HP for allies. It's going to be quite useful if you're using Death Welders, but if you really want to swap out Inspire Courage, you could, and you could actually take Be Vigilant here. We get Agility and You Kill It. Now, You Kill It is going to help give some AP to allies in the longer encounters, but it's going to be less useful later on. And lastly, we take the Finest Hour Upgrade 1, which is during our extra turn, our allies deal more damage, which is going to be based on our Fellowship. Over on the Astra Militarum Commander, we get Medicae early because we're not going to be going into Demolition Engineer till later, and this means that we'll have access to Medicae kits. The first upgrade I take is Point Blank because this is very useful for using shotguns to fight the Chaos Spawn. Get Ballistic Skill, then Rapid Reload. The reason we get Rapid Reload is a lot of our high rate of fire weapons early on require a lot of reload, so lowering the cost of reload by 2 is actually pretty big. We take ballistic skill and rapid fire because focus on ballistic skill to get those hits in is quite important. But then we take perception. Now perception is very useful because not only does it increase our turn order, it lowers enemy dodge. Burst fire and arrow hits are auto hits, so the ballistic score doesn't matter, but it does work for many of our talents. This will lower enemies dodge, so it will actually guarantee that we get those hits in there. Familiar Kickback is going to be working with our Fortress World. I've explained Fortress World so many times, but basically it gives us chances to keep shooting and to get some free attacks that cost 0 AP. So Familiar Kickback is one of those first upgrades that you take to start trying to get that Fortress World stuff to proc. Unfaltering Fire is one that we go into here with. Rapid Fire no longer reduces damage. We get some more demolitions. We've got some Firearm Mastery Upgrade 2 going in here. We get Fired Up. We get Agility. We get Concentrated Fire and we go into Awareness. I've built into Awareness here. You don't need to go into Awareness, but you both mostly want Demolitions and Awareness for a lot of stuff that you're going to be doing here. We pick up Strength because we're going to be going into a Heavy Gunner build, and we get Never Stop Believing as well as Muzzle Velocity, Field of Fire, Heavy Weapons Proficiency, Awareness, and Firearm Mastery Upgrade 3. Now, if you're looking to see what the starting stats are in character creation, do check the spreadsheet below because I show it there. But just a quick rundown of that. Noble is a Imperial Welder, which you can take for Humanity's Finest for Agility or Fellowship, depending if you want to increase your turn order or do more Fellowship. And for the Astra Militarum Commander, we go Fortress World. And what we increase on both of them is ballistic score. Both of them see agility increases. However, the Noble takes Fellowship, whereas the Astra Militarum Commander takes Perception. Okay, so we are going to look at a couple of turns of battle here so you can see what's going on. Starting positions do matter, as you can see these guys run in and hit me. Normally I would cut this bit, but I just want you to see how good Shotgun Arbitus is again because it is bloody hilarious. Look at this guy go. Just absolutely annihilating people. But yes, after this, we'll keep it a little bit more relevant to what I'm actually showing you with the Noble and the Lord Commander. So, on the first turn of the Noble, I'm actually going to be setting up Heinrichs as my servant. What is important here is you pick who your main carrier is going to be. You can only pick one at the start, but as we get on to later bits, we will be able to pick more allies. Now, as you can see here, Shotgun very useful for knocking things off allies or forcing enemies to dodge. However, due to low perception, dodge is going to happen. I've put the pneumo boots on Heinrich so he can buff up and charge. I could take the opportunity to buff here, or I could just charge and then get a second attack. So it's going to be more about what you want to do here. But as you can see with those buffs, Heinrich comes in with a tasty 69 damage. Now I could either try to kill this last enemy, or I could start setting myself up to buff. Because I don't have Medal of Alacrity yet, it is a little bit low, so I am going to buff Allied Resolve, and then I'm actually going to move Heinrichs in next to this enemy, which means he'll also get MP boost for being next to my Noble. Depending on which Noble upgrades I have, he could also get temporary HP from this. Now, Idra is in a sticky little situation here, as she's now going to have to deal with an enemy that is touching base with her, so if she tries to attack, it will attack her. But as you can see, Psychic Scream doing 50 damage. Now, if we go over to our Lord Commander, this is mostly a burst fire build, so this is why we had the comparison to the shotgun build to see the sort of damage differences we're going to be doing here. We are using the Ripper in Act 1. As you can see, absolutely fantastic damage, though it doesn't quite have the knockback, but because all the enemies were grouped up very nicely, the overpen here is working in our favour. This is also why we use secondary shotguns, so we can really push up and hit both these enemies quite hard. Boom. Now, back to our servant's main turn. He is buffed up, he has lasting impression, and he is getting ready to kick some ass. So, because he is a Pyromancer, he is going to knight and orchestrate, and then he's going to go in. However, we didn't get quite the 5 cells that we needed to be able to get some of the buffs there. Coming back around to our Noble's turn, who's taking a little bit of damage here, we're going to try and snipe at some enemies to get the servant a little bit of help, and then we are going to bring it down to him. Now, having mobility is very important, which is why it's good to be putting this on a pneumo boots warrior. So yep, charging in, some big 81 plus 12 there. So some meaty damages thanks to our buff, and because he's pyromancer, he can then also hit people at range, which is why I am switching to the staff to follow up. As you can see, the psychic damage is almost nothing compared to his melee. Coming back to our Astra Militarum commander, who's running up the other side in parallel whilst all this is happening. Both of these guys moving in tandem. So I could make a rapid fire or I could get 2 attacks, but as you can see, my damage is absolutely fantastic for mowing things down on this side. Coming back over to Heinrichs on his turn, we are getting ready to set up some distances for another meaty charge. Yep, this time we got the full distances in there, so another 64 plus 10. Enemies are going to be a little bit far out, so we can either go with the Biomancy Staff or the Pyro attack. That will also heal us from that Siphon Life, which is pretty nice. Alright, so back round to the Noble's turn, who is able to, because of lasting impression, even though he doesn't have line of sight and he can't currently put on voice command, he can use move and bring it down, even though he can't see Heinrichs. So it's very useful to set him up and keep moving, which is why it's good to have a servant and to set up these things with lasting impression. So yep, he's able to charge in and get a kill, which also sets up his Daring Breach. So he's going to be able to ignite, go back to melee, Daring Breach, and he's going to be able to keep turbo boosting this warrior, which you could also pick a Blade Dancer. They're both very good for this. But yeah, nice use of crowd kill there. And that's sort of going to bring what we're showing off in Act 1 for setting up these 2 builds, along with just a final cheeky little ignite. Okay then, moving the Noble into Tier 2, we're actually going to go Overseer and we're going to take Servo Swarm Efficiency. This will allow us to AoE our officer abilities as well as our Noble ability. Medicaid Signals are going to be the first ability we pick up, and then Emergency Stimulation. This is going to help being able to save some allies here. Overcharge is the heroic that comes with it. We do focus on getting ballistic skill up, and the first talent we're going to get here is Safe Shelter. Priority Signal is another useful signal that can create all sorts of chaos with the enemy, so it's one that we take here. Another one is Master's Patronage. This will help your familiar do a little bit of tanking, in fact, because yeah, the familiar will be gaining temporary wounds. It can also count as cover with certain upgrades as you go through. We increase our fellowship as well as getting stronger together, so that gives half of our humanity's finest allies. Photo calibration is going to be lowering the cost of using our pet, as well as getting some fellowship persuasion. Now, I take Overcharge upgrade 3 here because, again, that deflection is quite useful. Kinetic Module is whenever extra turns is granted a 4-cell radius around the Overseer Swarm until the end of combat, the Overseer gains 3 fellowship and has their damage increased by bonus damage % stacks. Still not quite sure what that means, but I believe it's the fellowship bonus damage going into it. This works for other officers using it, so say you have Cassie or Jay in the party, this will actually benefit from that. We get You Protect Me, which is another upgrade for some of our noble abilities, more agility, more Law Imperium, and then we take up Provocation Signal because it gives enemies a chance to attack each other. Symbiosis is another bit of way to save some AP, so whenever we extrapolate ability for the first time in the round, we get 1 AP back. We get Training Perception, so we can level that up a little bit, which is what I put into next, because again, this is going to help for our turn order and landing our attacks. Unseen Support is going to be the next upgrade we take at 18, with You Are Next at 19, and lastly, I take Overcharge upgrade 2. You could potentially take 1, but I prefer 2 here. As for the Astra Militarum Commander, we're going to be building him into heavy guns. So we start off going into Arc Militum. So we take in Versatility, and this is why this build is called Lord Commander Militum. I like to get Reckless Rush first. Some people like to get Wildfire. If you like to swap them around, do feel free to do that. All Out is very important. So whilst you're under Reckless Rush, this is the upgrade. So yes, we do not cost our MP. However, extra turns can mess with this. It's been weird since 1.3. Steady Superiority is the heroic that we get, though you will be focusing more on Firearms Mastery to increase your rate of fire. Rank 5, you get the AP increase as well as moving up ballistic skill, and we also take Always Ready. This will start with 2 stacks versatility, which is what is required to be used with Reckless Rush, because you need stacks of versatility to get those plus the extra 3 stacks. Then at rank 7 we pick up Wildfire and we start getting our heavy gun talent here in Breaking Point. This is the point where you can actually start to switch over, though I prefer to wait until rank 8 when we have Heavy Gunner. We increase our demolition some more, we increase our perception to low enemy dodges as well as increasing our turn order, and we start picking up talents like Overpower, and now heavy guns are fully online by level 24. I take Dependable here because I like to get the extra armor for later, but you could swap this out and you could take Flash Fire early and then swap out something up and move all the other talents up. We then get Demolition, some more agility. So we get Steady Superiority upgrade 4, so if we're going on for multiple rounds we can use Firearm Mastery first and then go into Steady Superiority. Flash Fire is then when we come into at rank 13, as well as we get Perception, Hail of Steel. Hail of Steel is going to be another upgrade for our Fortress world. Then we get Devastating Attack, which can do some hilarious things where we can push enemies across the attack in those big old burst fires. Breaking Attack is the upgrade here, so we can reduce enemies' armor and toughness. More Perception, more Adaptability, which is going to mean we're going to start increasing our critical hit chances. Suppression Fire. This one's actually very good because it lowers dodge reduction from when you're using your shotgun, so it's quite useful for going into Act 3. And at the end here, we get Steady Superiority Upgrade 2. Okay, so I am picking the ship encounter of the Heartless. Unfortunately, this encounter has been nerfed as the devs keep nerfing the DLCs because too many BBs are complaining about it, which is just my personal gripe. However, it's just a shame when you see such big nerfs on Unfair. I'd prefer that they would nerf lower difficulties and leave the higher difficulties alone, but maybe we'll get that in the brutal mode. But anyway, on to the encounter. Now, I am using Cassia as well as my Noble Officer and also the Astra Militarum Commander. So I'm replacing Argenta with my Commander, I'm replacing Jay with my Officer, and unfortunately I do have my own custom rogue trader, but please ignore the fact that I have so many mercenaries going on here. These builds are actually designed to run solo. You don't have to run them together. One thing that I do have a good opportunity here is to show off what you can actually do with Bounty Hunter and Pascal. I know I do poo-poo operatives a lot, but they are very usable. It's just that compared to what you can do with everything else, if you're going to look at the 2 turns that we're going to see comparatively here and just how much you can really pump out with them, you'll see what the comparison looks like. So Claim the Bounty with self-calibrating goggles is going to set up some immobilize and stun. Because of that, our next attack is actually going to refund an attack if it's a single shot attack. So we use Cold the Bold, we fire in here. Somehow misses some of a 95%, but okay. That refunds it, so we can make a 3rd attack. As you can see, because we managed to group things up, we do quite a bit of damage here. The only problem is just single shot weapons are really low damage. They do need buffs. Like, if a plasma cannon, instead of using an area and overcharge shot, just had an overcharge that increased damage, did area, and did knockback and knockdown, that would actually be really good. But all the damage of all single fire weapons do need big increases. They just don't quite compete with area and burst. But anyway, so my Noble manages to go quite high in the initiative order because all those increases to agility and perception. So first we're going to AoE the You Serve Me. This will then AoE Voice of Command, and then we'll AoE Air of Authority. Unfortunately, because it's coming through the pet, we don't get that +5 increase from the Noble. Yes, unfortunately, we will see it whenever he attacks. You'll see those buffs. But, yeah, because he's not directly used the abilities on those allies, they don't get those buffs. But, however, we can get that when we use some other things that we actually target ourselves. So we're going to move him only to the edge of the boundary of the skull, because that way we can still get a double, bring it down. These extra turns will also be applying the kinetic module stacks. So we're going to hopefully, well, we'd hope to hit there to give some buffs for the You Serve Me, but it is what it is. So as you can see, I use Reckless Rush in this extra turn, which is actually going to bug it for the rest of the round. The devs probably want to have a little look at that, because the fact that I now can't use that for the rest of the turn, I know it was to stop the Bounty Hunter resets, but it seems weird that it does that once per round thing with extra turns, but maybe that's the way that they're trying to balance, I don't know. I'm not going to complain too hard about it. But because of those kills there, we were able to get the momentum to give a heroic, and we did it from Cassia, who'd already gone for her turn because of the double bring it down because of Servo Skull. So we move up, we shotgun, we try to clear both, but unfortunately we don't get both of these enemies. However, we are going to take some really tasty heavy bolter shots here. 19 shots coming in with some fairly respectable damage. Unfortunately, because we can't use it in melee, because I didn't take close quarters training, because the way it currently works is it minuses 10 through ballistic skill, and it allows you to shoot in melee, but that permanent minus 10 should only be when you're using the gun, not always, but that's the way it currently works. And as you can see, my movement is trapped because for some reason Reckless Rush isn't applying to the entire round and I can't reuse it. So that, yes, that's the little annoyance that I'd like to see the devs look at, that the effect of Reckless Rush lasts the entire battle if it were not going to let me recast it. Anyway, moving back to Cassia, this is still on par of her Bring It Down turn, which has actually been able to finest hour into finest hour. This is why the Noble is such a really strong supporting archetype, and one of the reasons that I've made the video this way to show off the two things here, because the Noble is allowing the Astra Militarum Commander to do all of this. Now, you can do this with Cassia and Jay, but if you didn't have the Commander here, you'd probably be doing this with Argenta, or Heinrichs, or Abelard, or one of your other damage carry companions like Cabela. But yes, we are basically going to single this encounter just from our two officers here because they have such high initiative.
I will not be deterred.
Build up some versatility by swapping between our different attack types. Some very nice damage is starting to be built up from these burst fires. And as you can see, our rate of fire is just continuing to increase because of our field of fire upgrade from our Astra Militarum Commander. His ability is once per turn, but there is so much you can do with it in that one turn. Alright, so that's actually brought us to the end of our Noble's turn. So Cassia and the Noble have gone, and now we're actually back to the main turn of Astra Militarum Commander, who's going to finish this encounter before half of our team have even acted. This is how powerful some of these setups are, allowing you to one turn even on unfair this early on, and that's going to bring a close to this section of battle. Okay, so exemplar levels for the Noble. I like to start off with Eager for Battle because once you have the Commander's Chrono, you are going to be going first, so it's good to have all that extra AP. I get Be Vigilant here because this is going to be a way to start pumping weapon skill for allies. We get Perception. Brother in Arms is going to be a Resolve upgrade coming from the pet. More Bliss skill. Grenadier is one I normally like to take much earlier, but I decided to take it later on this build because we're focusing on other things. It's going to be very useful for those Iron Eye grenades and other debuff status grenades. Break Their Ranks is one that can be used AoE, which is quite good, and it also applies to Arbiters using the shotguns. More Persuasion. Firebrand's going to start increasing the AP that is given via down, which is very good, as well as Enhanced Augmentics, which works with many of the pet's key features. We get some Bliss skill and Prepare for an Assault, so Break Their Ranks can be used on targets with no enemies adjacent to them. Advanced Tracking then comes up next, so we can have multiple signals up, and it also increases the effectiveness of our pet, as well as getting some more Fellowship. Dependable Ally is one that whenever a familiar's ability is used on an ally, it can be the oversave for 1 round. That ally gains +5 bonus characteristics considered to be key characteristics of the familiar. I've taken this because I thought this works with Extrapolate, but I've actually yet to test it, and I don't know if it kind of works with the effects of the relay signal abilities. We'll need to check. If it doesn't, then definitely do drop this one. We take Hugo on here, so the Noble Servant gains 2 movement points every turn, so that's going to affect all allies here. Eager Subordinates is another way that when we give extra turns to allies, they do more damage. Seize the Initiative. Once we have the Commander's Chrono, because we're going first, this is very good because it means our allies will all do extra damage because we're skipping initiative. Personal Oversight is another one that can increase allies' resolve, which is obviously very powerful. Self-learning algorithms is a way to increase the stats of our pet here. and it will also link up with the pet item that I've put onto here. More fellowship, more perception, we get some Medicaid, and lastly, we've got some options here, so if you check the spreadsheet, you can see the different variations, but for now, I've got Attention on here, Blood of Martyrs. Attention will be another way to buff our allies when we give extra turns. Blood of Martyrs, which is whenever the heroic act happens, they get 10% of their maximum wounds plus 14 temp wounds. Energy multiplier is another one that we can use to start bringing up some characteristics. Going into Medicaid mostly because we're just pumping that because we've already maxed out our other skills. Rank 17, picking up Iron Discipline to help our ally skill checks, but we probably won't be using them very much. Same with Better to Die for the Emperor. By this point in the game, if you're taking damage, something's gone wrong with the party. Take Aim is going to be the final ability we pick. That's going to be another good use to upgrade some of our ranged companions here, as well as Perception. Flag Bearer is going to be a way to actually buff our allies when we're close to them, and because we are quite tanky, we can do that with this build. Steady is going to be a good upgrade, so increases our ranged attacks to our allies, as well as getting the final AP increase. Over on the Astra Militarum Commander, the first exemplar talent we take is Peak Condition. This will turn our wounds into strength. The reason we do this is so we can pick up power arm efficiency. We take Swift Slaughter, which is going to make our soldier killing spree much more efficient. More demolitions and some critical versatility here to increase our critical damage. Power arm efficiency we are picking up because we want to use the Artificer's armor. This will change our burst fire to 1 AP, which makes this incredibly effective build because we'll now have area and burst attacks for 1 AP. You can pick from a numerous amount of abilities here that you can see on the spreadsheet, but I've gone for Entrench for now for whenever you have leftover AP because you can actually hit the attack cap with this build. We get some more demolition as well as get eager for battle, so during our first turn of combat the character has 2 additional action points. Third target's going to start using up more damage, so it's going to be using more of the Arc Militants stuff here. Bliss skill, Demolition Engineer is going to be a way to pump some of our damage for our area weapons, but you could just move up Rack and Ruin if you wanted to get that sooner. We go in for Kick as well as Perception and then Martial Arts upgrade, so we can knock enemies prone with that kick, and that does help us build versatility. Flinching Heroism is a way that we can gain stats from our origin. Awareness, Degraded Defense is still the massive damage increase that can increase our damage by up to 1000%, so it's very, very useful. Rank 10, we start increasing our AP, and then we start getting some of the big soldier damage upgrades in Rack and Ruin and enough bullets for everyone. Demolition is now being pumped, and that's being turned into damage for our area weapons. We get Contempt for the Weak, as well as more Perception, more Agility, more Medicaid. Vital Points is going to be another big damage increase for our critical hits, as well as Integrity. That can be used for a numerous amount of things, but increasing Ballistic Skill is always good for this build, especially with the Compensator Gloves. We get Exploit Weakness, we get Medicaid, we get Focal Point, so if we've got anyone that's doing priority target, we can increase our damage. Spare Magazine can help us here, but there are other options that you could go for shoulder for here, as well as I take Dash here, but again, if you want to take something else, you could. We can get some more Agility. Deadly Aim is quite a big damage boost, as well as Accustomed for Glory, and then finally some more AP. So, the final encounter I'm going to show you is from the Forceful Gene Stealer encounter. I have very high saves because of everything that I've built all my team into. However, the Raven did get knocked down, so you're not going to see me abuse Idara's AoE buffs. However, we're going to Usurp Me AoE again as we did in Act 2. We're going to then pop on all of our nice little officer buffs that we are able to just absolutely fly out. We're also going to use Break Their Ranks, and we can use Take Aim as well. So we're going to be building some damages here. Now let's bring up the damage counter before we do this. And as you can see, Break Their Ranks has actually encouraged the enemies to attack us back here. And unfortunately, I did not realize that it applied to my Arbites, and he shotgunned through the boss and killed my own damn skull. A whoopsie daisies. So I will single bring it down rather than double bring it down. Heal up Pascal a little bit. And we are going to Sensory Deprivation the boss, which is going to cause our Vigilant to attack again. So yeah, some nice handy 500 shotgun damage coming because the boss failed a willpower save here. Anyway, moving on, we are using Spirit Drape, which you can rush for Janus Act 2 Colony of reward, and we're actually going to buff our Astra Militarum Commander. Unfortunately, because our pet is down, we are not passing perils. But we are getting ourselves nice and set up here. So I'm actually risking Idra a lot here, but she's going to do over 1,000 damage and some health steal. Reason I'm doing all this is I'm trying to get the heroic action back from, unfortunately, from my warp perils that lowered it, so I can really set off my Astra Militarum Commander to go off. Remember, this is all being enabled and sponsored by the Noble. So now the Noble has bring it down and generated a heroic act without using the black ring of the Inquisition, which you could very much use to do as well. We're actually going to send off our Astra Militarum Commander to go do his kill machine things. This is without navigator buffs, but he still has full officer and psycho buffs. Luckily, we're going to keep Reckless Rush, unlike Act 2, which was used in a bring it down turn rather than a finest hour turn. So 200 damage going on there, but we already have our 1 AP burst fires, and you're going to see that the damage on those burst fires is already goddamn respectable. Bullets doing up to 160 damage there, and it's firing close to 30 almost. And I am building up versatility by swapping attack types. Yeah, when each bullet is doing 200 damage and you're doing 30 round bursts, and this is before we're able to build up stacks of degraded defense, which can actually increase a lot of this damage up to like almost 1,000 per bullet. So yeah, tougher enemies are going to see a lot more damage coming in towards them. But this is going to bring to a close this combat encounter, so you can see sort of what we're doing here. When it comes to items, you should really just equip what you think is best for your character, but for some key ones that I will recommend, over in Act 2 you have the Commander's Monocle, which can increase some of our extra damage. In Act 1 you have Medal of Alacrity, which can increase the AP of Bring It Down. However, if you're using this on a rogue trader, chances are this would be the Char's Pendant, because if you've built into Dogmatic, you can turn Law Imperium into your Fellowship, which you can only really need from the 2nd rank, so it is pretty good for that. I've got the High World Origin Voidsman Armor for the Perception because I had a ton of these, but you don't really need to use that. Same with the Precinct Fox Relay. This is a fairly useful item, but it's not one you need. But one that is going to be MVP is a Server Skull user in Act 4, and yes, I know that is very late in the game, but you always start first in the initiative. I've got Mercy's Gift as well as Noble Silk Gloves and Commissar's Boots, but you don't need these. The same with the weapons. I've got Cruel Fate from DLC 2 here, which is a way to generate some AP, but again, you don't need that. And I just had a shotgun to keep enemies off me from when they get too close, because there's that chance for knockdown. Over on the pet, one of the really powerful items I found in here was Stimulation Protocol. So yeah, there are chances that you can give off extra turns as you extrapolate abilities. So yes, very, very useful. Over on the Lord Commander Militant, gear is actually a lot more important. The key piece of gear that you're going to be looking out for here is the improved Heavy Bolter, because it's the best heavy weapon in the game by far, and it's not even close. Ruined Shuriken Cannon, yeah, keep coping. Compensator Gloves, also huge for increasing rate of fire. The Gunslinger Helmet for getting more damage to our ranged attacks, and the Modified Artificer Armor. The wearer's attacks with heavy weapons cost -1 AP less. So yes, very good for getting 1 AP burst. Items that are going to be more up to your discretion. I've got Caligae of St. Keith, Tactical Backpack, Echo of Victory, Bead of Might, and Fury Incarnate. Many other items that could fit here, but whatever goes you. And secondary, I do think you should just have your best shotgun. At the moment, it's the Soul Pattern shotgun, but there are many others that you will see in Act 4 and Act 5 that could easily replace it. But these are going to be some gear suggestions to look out for. But yep, that concludes looking at the Noble and the Astra Militarum Commander. These are two very fun playthroughs. I have done full playthroughs previously, but not on current build. I just did some main test encounters, and yes, they are still incredibly effective. Let me know what you're looking forward to in the 1.5 update, and I'll see you all on the next live stream or the next video. Bye for now, Revan out.